Compensation and pension exams. Stop when it hurts and tell the truth. Tell the truth about why you're stopping and when you feel the pain. Tip number one, learn about your disability and how the VA is going to rate it. Do a self evaluation and get a hold of your medical records. So, what is your disability? How bad do you think it is? How much have you complained about it? What kind of evidence is in your medical records? Service treatment records, VA medical records, private medical records, all medical records, right? Look through there and, have you been complaining about this? Other than to yourself, like to an actual doctor, and did it get into your records? Another way to do this is My Healthy Vet. Send in complaints that way. That's another way to get evidence into your medical records. So you're going to need symptoms, right? So do you have them, and have you been reporting those? And then ongoing treatment. Are you even doing that? What kind of treatment is ongoing? These are the kinds of things that the CNP exam doctor is looking for. So, if you're strong on this one or weak on that one, you need to kind of do, self-assess your situation and figure out where your strengths and weaknesses are. Because the doctor is going to go dive right into those most likely, and you'll at least be prepared to answer those questions or whatever, right? So, tip number two is prepare yourself by having one story and stick to your story. Like, that's it. I don't care what your story is, where you found it, whatever. Get a story and stick to it. My tinnitus started on the flight line in Panama, and it continued into Desert Storm, and I was exposed to loud, jet engines and stuff like that. Like, that's the story. Don't embellish the story. Don't exaggerate the story. The story is the story. So pick one, whatever one you need to pick that you can remember, and that's it. You die with that story. That's the one you're going to stick with for the rest of your life. If your story is inconsistent and you continue to file other claims, and let's say they reopen you up and ask you questions about something you already won, like tinnitus or something, and then it's like, oh yeah, it wasn't on the flight lines, it was a grenade explosion. It's like, now you're contradicting yourself, and they could possibly put you down as a liar, which is called malingering. So have one story, and that's it. That's the one you stick with. You need to talk about how your disabilities affect your social and your work life. That's what this all comes down to. It's a medical disability, and it affects your ability to work and function as a husband, a father, a son, whatever, right? So, have you been divorced? Did she take the kids? Do you have an arrest record? These are all, problems that will work in your favor. It's embarrassing to talk about an arrest record, especially if you picked up a felony charge 20 years ago and it's just like lingering around, and it's like, oh, I was an idiot drug addict back when in my 20s, and I'd really like to not talk about this. This is where you talk about this. It's embarrassing that you got divorced for a stupid reason or something, whatever it is, and she got the kids. You want to talk about that stuff too. These are social impairment issues. So with a VA claim, there's social and occupational impairment. So if you're working, talk about the struggle. You have road rage as you're driving to work. You want to beat the shit out of your boss every time you see his fucking ugly face. But you hold back, but you you don't know. You might snap one day. You want to talk about that stuff. Work life problems and social life problems. So tip number 4 is don't hold back and tell the doctor all the weird stuff that you do. So you may, like, wow, I do some weird stuff. You may or may not notice how weird you are. But people around you do. Your ex-wife does. My ex-wife definitely knew that I was a weirdo. So you have ticks, and most non-veterans, we're all civilians now, don't have these ticks. Like they're not constantly on the lookout for people trying to get them. Have security cameras that you can look at. Are armed. You're always ready. You're constantly doing threat assessments when you shouldn't be. You're just going to get a Snickers bar out of the gas station. You shouldn't be doing a threat assessment as you enter the parking lot and enter the store, and you're just scanning around, and you don't trust people. So that's not normal. But you need to talk about that stuff. You're going to have to dig deep to figure out if you even have that stuff. Tip number 5: be prepared to talk about your disability um, being caused while you're on active duty, not prior to active duty or after active duty, on active duty, right? So this is something that a CNP examiner is going to ask. It may seem like it's a sneaky bullshit thing, and maybe it is, but they're trying to figure out, did this really happen while you're in the military? And if you tell them this is what it was, they can check that box. So they're going to ask you about your childhood. Were you abused? Is that where your PTSD came from? No. What about after the service? You got in that car accident when you were 28. Maybe that's where your PTSD came from. Yeah, that screwed me up and made my PTSD worse. But my combat PTSD was a result of being on active duty service. They're gonna steer around. Just be prepared for them to ask about your, pre-active duty service and post, and you want to just keep driving it back to active duty. This has to happen on active duty, unless you're filing a secondary claim. But it still has to have a connection to active duty.